So we were able to get that done. One of the other very proud moments of the fire department, on August 21st, several members of the fire department received 2 awards from a fire back in June of 2020 on Essex Avenue. We had 8 members receive a group effort award, and 3 members received the Valor Award, Bronze Valor Award. So very, very proud moment for the fire department. That was a very intense fire. Between the efforts of the police department and the fire department, we were able to pull out 3 people from that fire. And, it was a really, really great effort by both agencies. Other than that, nothing else too crazy. Just wanted to go over a couple other things. The first thing is the recruit firefighter that we hired. His start date was October 4th. He's now attending the Bergen County Fire Academy. Technically it's a Bayonne fire department class. They have 16 members there. Well, they had 16, now they have 13. But our guy was taken in by them. I was able to get him in the class, and Bayonne kind of adopted him as one of their own. So he does PT in the morning from 7 to about 8 o'clock with the Bayonne guys, and then attends class from 9 till about 4:30 at the Bergen County Fire Academy. So he'll be there till probably early December, and then we'll do some in-house training with him, and then hopefully have him on the line by January 1st. The other thing I want to do is introduce Rick Salkowski. He's one of our other deputy chiefs. I assigned him as our executive officer, which is what I was doing under Chief Weber. So now he's handling the executive officer duties, training officer, and helping me out with the administrative stuff. So if you hear the name Rick Salkowski, that's the guy right there. So and the last thing is we do have a minor COVID outbreak within the fire department. With the weekly testing that we have, I have one of my 4 platoons that most of the guys on the platoon are not vaccinated, and they all went for testing Monday. When they got the results on Tuesday, 2 of them tested positive. So I currently have 7 guys that are out on quarantine. So none of them really have any symptoms. The one is kind of tired, some body aches, but other than that, nothing major so far, which is good. But because we're the guys are there together for 24 hours, we're all considered obviously close exposure. So anybody who was working on Monday for that 24-hour shift, they're all on quarantine. Hopefully I can start getting guys back next week, but it all depends on how the testing goes and symptoms and everything like that. So the 3 other crews that I have, majority of those guys are vaccinated. So knocking on wood, hopefully those guys are okay. But I think we were able to contain it just to the 1 platoon. So but yeah, so I have 7 guys right now. 2 of them tested positive, 2 of them tested negative, and a couple others were just waiting on additional test results. But I anticipate that we're probably going to get a couple more positives from that group. So they just might be a couple days behind with their body showing that they have it. So other than that, that's all I have.
Chief,
Okay,
could
well,
I?
First, welcome, Deputy Chief. Chief, I have a few questions, and then we'll take questions from other members of the committee. And that do you know, or does Administrator Gimes know what percentage of our firefighters are vaccinated?
So I believe it's approximately about 70%. I believe it's 10 or 11 guys that are not vaccinated. I know that that one of the guys who was not vaccinated recently just got his 2nd shot, so he's in the process of getting vaccinated. But yeah, out of 43 of us, I believe there's 10 that are not vaccinated.
Just for clarification, it's 10 that decided not to tell us whether or not they're vaccinated. We don't actually know
Correct.
if they're vaccinated.
Correct.
Okay, so it's, so what does that make? 32 or 33 that told us that they are vaccinated, and 10 who haven't told us whether they are or are not? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, we can deduce further internally without saying publicly based on the recent outbreak and who has to quarantine and who doesn't. I mean, we can obviously figure that out, but it's not something I think we should discuss.
No, I'm not asking for you to, discuss publicly anyone's, health status or, any specific employee's status. I was just wondering if we had sort of the statistics overall. And, I think in terms of what we can discuss at this meeting and what you'd be allowed to disclose, I think that's probably as far as we can go on that. Although if any other committee members have questions, we'll take those. Chief, I had another question, and that is, so that, the firefighter is currently at the Fire Academy in Bergen. He'll be doing both Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and even though, you said he's part of the sort of the Bayonne class, that just means that's who his classmates are. He's getting the same Firefighter 1 and 2 training as he would if, because I mean, it would be rare for there to be an all Maplewood class. Normally, whoever we send through is with Jersey City or Newark or usually there's some. It's a mixed class, and our guys are in with other departments, right?
Correct. Yeah, and a lot of the bigger departments like Jersey City, Bayonne, even a place like maybe Bloomfield or they will usually have 10, 12, 15 firefighters in a class at a time. Most of the academies usually keep the attendance between 20 and 25, just for the span of control. And you are correct. We usually have 2, 3, maybe 4 at the most. But yeah, then this class, it's not Bayonne specific, but it is a career class, and there are some. I think there's 4 or 5 volunteer firefighters that that are in the class, but they're not participating in the PT in the morning. So
right. So this trainee will get the same. Will graduate with the same training from the academy as if we were going to any other academy, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a state standard that every academy has to meet. Some academies can obviously do a little more, but there is a basic baseline level of training that every academy has to meet.
All right, Chief, I'll have some more questions once we get into overtime and some other things, but in terms of the August report or some of the other things that you updated the committee on, we have committee member DeLuca, who's a member of the Public Safety Committee, and we also have Committeewoman Adams, who's joining us tonight. So do either of you have questions for the Chief?
Yeah, I just want to be clear about one thing, Chief. Just for the record, the quarantine requires us to bring in other officers on overtime?
Yes. So in order to maintain our 8 firefighter staffing, which is our minimum, yes, we will have to. So on Friday, there is 1 or actually 2 members from that platoon that have said that they are vaccinated, and those 2 do not have to quarantine according to the CDC. So because we have 2 members of that platoon that are vaccinated, we don't have to worry about covering their shift. But the remaining firefighters who did not disclose, whether or not they are vaccinated, we do have to cover their shift. Yes.
So the personal choice that people making is having a financial impact on the taxpayers in Maplewood.
Yep.
It would appear that way. Yes.
Is anything else, Mr. Luca?
I'm done.
Okay. Ms.
No.
Adams, do you have a question you wanted to ask the Chief?
Actually, Mr. DeLuca asked exactly what I was thinking about. We have to pull people in on overtime to cover unvaccinated firefighters. and I won't get on my soapbox, but suffice to say, that's disappointing at best.
Right. Well, and I think, Mr. Jimes can confirm, that we already have an item on this that, is going to be up for discussion at next week's township committee meeting in terms of our township policy with respect to vaccination for employees. So, I don't think there's anything further that we can do as a public safety committee tonight, but there are, I think, things that we can discuss and actions we might be able to take as a township committee next Tuesday night.
Yes, and all of the timeframes as far as the quarantining was, discussed with Candace, and it just all follows the, CDC guidelines. So.
Right. Oh yeah, no, I mean, Chief, you're doing what you have to do, and I'm confident that, in working with Ms. Davenport, that you guys are gonna, be getting good advice, and you're gonna follow the procedures and protocols that are required. It's just, it's unfortunate that, this far in, we're in this situation, particularly given that, our firefighters and EMTs are on the front lines in terms of dealing with the public and, and have seen firsthand, COVID and, the impact it can have. But I won't get off on a soapbox either. I think that our, our feelings on this are pretty clear, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss this next week at the Township Committee in a forum where we can actually take action, which we can't tonight. Chief, without any other questions, I think we'll move on to overtime, and the reports you sent show, August and September overtime is actually being, the highest for those months in several years. And, I know that August and going into September, we have, summer vacations and such, but I'm just wondering if you could sort of address, the fact that, we're looking at, at least in recent memory, record overtime for those months, and maybe talk about the reasons for that and whether you think that's a sort of a blip, or whether that's a trend that you think is, we need to be concerned about continuing into the fall.
Sure. So, just to break down, the overtime hours. So, the total was 1352. Ida hit September 1st. So we had 279 hours of overtime just for Ida. So, that's not obviously a yearly occurrence in September.
Mhm.
So, I think it's fair to say that, if we were at 1352, you knock out Ida, and we're down to, probably close to maybe 950, which is still higher for September than, what it normally is. We did have 65 hours, to Mr. DeLuca's point, of overtime that we had to use for testing, because when we test a member, or send the members for testing, they go on the department time. So in order to cover them, we have to hire back personnel. So we had 65 hours there. Sick time, we still have one firefighter that is out on long-term injury. It's a workers' comp injury. So we're hoping to get him back soon. He is going through his treatment, so we're hoping to get him back soon. So we did have 360 hours. He wasn't all of that, but he was a majority of that. And then with the personal time, that's all contractually allowed time. So that makes up the majority of the time. So we don't have a lot of vacations for the rest of the year. However, it's always tough because we have 10 firefighters on a shift, and I have one firefighter on a shift that's going to be basically out to the end of the year. He had major surgery, not work related, but he's going to be out till the end of the year. So that shift is going to be down to 9 basically for the rest of the year. I have another crew that one member just went out on FMLA, for a good reason, for the birth of his child. So he'll be out for about a month. And that platoon is the one that has the firefighter that's out long-term. So that crew for the next month basically is going to be at minimum at 8. And then the other crew is going to be short because that's where the recruit will go. As I moved Deputy Chief Salkowski into the executive officer role, that created a shortage on the 4th platoon. So the 4th platoon will now have 9 firefighters. That's the most that they'll have till the end of the year, till the recruit is done in fire school. So I don't, I won't be as optimistic as I was earlier. I think it's fair to say that, overtime will still be, I don't think it'll be as high as this, but, I think we can anticipate it'll probably be higher than it has been historically for the rest of the year. Just because I know that I do have guys that are out on long-term stuff. So, well, like I said, I won't be as optimistic as I was last month. So.
Okay. Well, no, we can't expect you to see, clearly into the crystal ball of the future, but appreciate your insight into that. Do any of my colleagues have any questions for the chief on overtime? Not seeing any. So, Chief, the next item on the agenda, I'll actually ask Mr. DeLuca to address, or maybe Administrator Gimes, and that's just an update on where we stand with consolidation with South Orange.
So we are still having conversations with South Orange. We're moving forward with, there's been some tweaks to the state law about the joint meeting, but not significant. And we're still moving ahead. We're going to be having some discussion and closed on under negotiations. That's about it. We've had one meeting with South Orange. We're going to have another one next week, and still trying to sort out the various aspects of the deal or the arrangement, the contract between us and South Orange.
Okay, thank you. That's the last item on the agenda. Anyone, Ms. Adams, Mr. DeLuca, Mr. Gimes, any questions for the chief before we go to public comment?
I have
Chief,
nothing.
Deputy Chief, any?
Nope.
Chief or Deputy Chief, anything else you want to tell the Public Safety Committee before we open it up to public comment? Okay. I see, well, we have there's our representative from the Community Board on Police, and I think we also have at least one attendee from the public here on the Zoom. So if anyone from the public would like to ask a question or make a comment, now is the time to either raise your hand or just unmute yourself and speak up. I'm not hearing or seeing anyone, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. And with that, Chief and Deputy Chief, we're going to go ahead and close the Fire Department portion of the Public Safety Committee meeting. As always, you're welcome to stick around, but we understand that there may be other things you want to spend your evening on, so you're also free to leave and have a good night. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
All right. Chief Duvall, you're up. We're going to move on to the Police Department portion of the agenda. And we have your August report. So no reason to take us through it in detail, but if you want to highlight anything from August for the Maplewood Police Department, anything you want to bring to the Public Safety Committee's attention, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you and good evening to all. So we had one burglary to a garage during the month of August. We had 7 auto thefts. Now, this was a little bit unique for this month in particular. We had 4 of the 7 were running and/or the keys were inside and vehicles were unsecure. 3 of them actually for this particular month had attempts to their, well, 2 had attempts to their ignition, and 1, the individual was in the car and scared off by the resident. I could tell you that continues to be a crime trend. Just recently, over the past couple of days, our 24-hour establishments, although recently over this past week, they've been stealing the cars out of the 24-hour establishments that were just left running in the lot. So we're doing a campaign in the lots of these locations to try to get people to encourage people to not leave their car running. We had one at the Quick Check today that the person locked their car running, which I guess, they thought that was a good idea, but they still wound up stealing the car. So that is the monthly crime trend. For the month, we're still down from 2020, and year to date, we're down 27%. So that's the UCR. The restorative justice, we remain at 5 referrals to the restorative justice team, and we hadn't had any arrests that would be referred to them for this month. I would, as always, ask you to look at our training. We do a lot of training, different than the fire department. We conduct a lot of our training when school is out. It's our best opportunity to conduct training. So I ask you to take a look at the training section, and that's all I have for the monthly report.
All right. Chief, could you tell us about the new in-house data program? Is it Enforces?
Yes, I was actually going to bring that up under new business, but sure, we could do that now if you like.
Okay, yeah, no, because that was something I actually saw. You always commend the training report to us, and it's something that I actually noticed that in September, all staff are going to be trained and enforce this. So I wanted to ask you to maybe give us some, I think we've sort of heard about the new data program before, but I was wondering if you could take us through and tell us more about that.
Sure, absolutely. So the first thing that I'll tell you is I made an agreement with our outgoing records management system to have access to their data. So there's nobody on this call in the public that should be worried that we won't be able to collect data. It's not an issue. So last Monday, we officially went live on Enforces, a new record management system. And the abilities that this touts is its simplistic nature, and also how the record management system shares data and information with our officers through intelligence, obviously through programs working with each other, and how the integration will make the jobs more efficient, easier to track information. So the things that we use now currently, InfoCop, which is where we run all of our plates, license plates, criminal histories, warrants, all that information. That information can be brought directly into our record management system. That information had to be typed twice, essentially, or manually entered into our old system. That's just one way that it can speed things up. Motor vehicle accident reports are no longer a paper that have to be filled out by the officers. They're auto-generated by Enforces. So the only thing that our officers have to do is actually make the drawing, and even that is done by a computer program. Feedback so far is obviously everybody is learning because it's different, and to look at it, it's very different. But what I've encountered so far is the officers have to get used to the fact that it is literally much easier to use than the old system. So I hear a lot of "that's it," meaning they're expecting something else, right? And they're pleasantly surprised. And ironically enough, Milburn, South Orange, East Orange, Irvington, all use Enforces. Okay, so obviously we modeled this by going to look at their systems and how efficient it is for them. And also with this program, we can share data between the interagencies. So that's very helpful as well. So we can search Newark data, Irvington data, South Orange is right next door. So far it's been tremendous.
Great. All right, thank you, Chief. So before we get into the overtime, you covered the August monthly, you covered the UCR, you covered crime trends, you covered youth restorative justice. Any of my colleagues have any questions for the Chief? Seeing none from Mr. DeLuca. We also have with us tonight now both Mr. Daffis and Ms. Adams. So if either of you have any questions for the Chief,
I just have a slight one about the car theft and the people leaving cars running and leaving, I mean, making it easy to steal. Is there any, I know there's been a little bit of public notice to, you know, basically announcements to the public, but can we step that up at all? And maybe since Mr. Daffis is here, he can speak to the communication aspect of getting that out there, because it's such a silly thing in a lot of ways that, you know, this is happening when it doesn't need to.
Yeah, we've put flyers out about that before, and they've actually been posted on the township website, so we can update and absolutely do that. Unfortunately, thefts and auto thefts are completely a crime of opportunity.
Right.
Virtually every case that we have, especially for the 24 hours locations, the individuals are generally just there. A matter of fact, I hate to even say this. We had a theft at the Dunkin' Donuts. The people were inside the Dunkin' Donuts, got their Dunkin' Donuts and jumped in the car.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
what about like even maybe posters at those 24-hour establishments would be helpful?
That's what we're doing. That's what we're asking the people to post as they walk into the establishments. They can see very brief, you know, hey, please lock your car, please take the keys with you. Just very safe, very simple, very basic. They won't have to read long. They'll just be able to tell what our message is.
Okay, thanks.
The residents are a whole different scenario. So I have to tell you, we are going into cold weather season, right? And this is where a majority of people are starting their cars from their bedrooms. And this is going to be the season where they have to resist doing that, unless they want to come out and find their cargo.
Yeah, for sure. Or they can get an electric car and the car's not running to warm it up.
Yeah.
Just kidding. But also true.
Mr. Daffis or Ms. Holler?
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Lembrick.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. And Stephanie, if there's any questions that you have for the Chief, you can ask them.
Thanks, none right now.
Okay, thank you. So Chief, the next item on the agenda is the overtime, which I don't think we have to spend a lot of time talking about. You know, we're you know, slightly up in some places, slightly down in others, but you know, when I look at the bottom line and I see that, you know, considering that we're seeing the impact of a new contract this year with, you know, with an increase in salaries, and I see that, you know, through 3/4 of the year, total salaries and OT for police and dispatch are less than $20,000 above what they were in 2020. I guess I really don't have any questions. I guess other than just ask you to just, you know, keep, you know, try to keep us on that if you can, because you know, it's obviously a big help. You know, especially because you may have just heard, we're having some overtime issues, especially the last couple of months in the fire department. So, when our larger personnel departments are able to keep overtime in check, that's really helpful for us in terms of our finances. And, when overtime adds up for those big departments, the numbers get big and impact the whole township. So I think we're looking great. I don't have any questions on that. If any of my colleagues have any questions on the overtime report, we can take them now.
Mr. Lembrick, I wanted to note that as of today, we have a total of 11 people out. So that is very significant. So although this overtime report is up, is current to September 30th, we have 11 people out of 63. It's a lot.
Yeah, no, and I'm hopeful that at least some of those are anticipated to be relatively brief. Is that right, Chief?
Only two are out on COVID protocol now. The others are extended leave.
And Chief, I'll ask you the same question I asked Chief Ariema. Do you have a sense, or maybe Mr. Jimes could help us here, of what percentage of the department is vaccinated, or at least has told us that they're vaccinated?
Yeah, about half. About half.
Okay.
So roughly 30. So we're about 30 vaccinated, about 30 not, or 10 of, give or take 8 to 10 of those did not tell us. So I just included those in the 30.
Right. Okay. So about half the department is either we know is not vaccinated or has not told us one way or the other.
Correct.
Okay.
We have
All right.
similar issues, as the chief said, that maybe not as dramatic as the fire department has, but we do have those active issues right now with quarantine.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. That's disappointing, but as with the fire department, I don't know if there's anything more that we can do at this meeting. But 4 of the people who are on this call, and then plus the mayor, will be at a meeting next week where this will be a topic of discussion. So
the only thing that I'd mention, Mr. Lembrick, is that I say there's 2 out now. That's just what I mean. There's 2 out now. That doesn't mean there hasn't been more. We just had, we just had 2 others return.
Right.
So we had 2 come back and 2 others go out.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, whatever you give us is always just a snapshot of whenever you took the picture. So I know overtime is through September, so that's that's through 3/4 of the year. And I know some things. Sometimes you give us a UCR report that's that's updated through the week before the meeting.
Yep.
And other times we're looking at an August report. So some of those numbers in like an August report are only updated through August, which by the time we meet in mid-October is 6 weeks old. So I understand that.
Yeah, and when I try to plan for these meetings, I plan to have as much data as I can in case I'm asked about it. And that's why I was prepared to offer. Yeah, there's 2 now, but there was several other ones.
No, Chief, we appreciate the accuracy and the transparency as always. So that takes us through, the first 4 items on the agenda. Item 5 is a community board on police update. Over the past month, the community board on police had both their first annual retreat as well as their regular monthly meeting, which was last week. So we have our community board on police representative to this meeting tonight, Stephanie Holler, as well as my co-liaison to the community board on police, Deputy Mayor Daffis. So if either of them, I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, so if either of them would like to go into more detail in terms of updating us on the community board on police's activities, I would welcome them to the floor.
Deputy Mayor Daffis, would you like to start?
Stephanie, why don't you give it a shot? Go ahead.
Yes, we had a wonderful time at the retreat, and it was good to see some of the members here, there, really focusing on what the priorities are going to be for the next year going forward. And that was really beneficial just to take a look at what we want to accomplish and what's actually within our scope of capabilities, really. Just level setting was very important. And of course, having guidance on what the process will be going forward. We'll have to get the background checks and take more measures just to see if we're able to access more information and what that might mean for the board. In the near term, we're very focused on the work to obtain a social worker and what that social worker will be doing. That's something that I'm immediately focused on, and everyone really chose different priorities, be it, using the data from the traffic survey and how that might materialize into, better relationships with policing. All of us chose different priority areas, and some of them are further along than others, such as working with the social worker. That's all from me.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
I have nothing to add. That was a pretty good summary. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, thank you, both Ms. Holler and Deputy Mayor Daffis. So does anyone have questions on the community board on police? Seeing none, I think we will move on. The next item is actually an agenda item that the mayor asked me to add, and I'll try to cover it in his absence. And that was just, he was contacted by at least one, maybe more residents inquiring about whether the township could implement some sort of online system for when people need overnight parking. And I think this came about, and Chief, I don't know if you were sent this link, but someone actually sent the mayor a link because Maplewood, Minnesota is, I guess, they have such a program, and someone went looking for it, and they thought they found what they were looking for, and then it turned out they were about 1,000 miles away from what they needed. But
That's
so,
funny. I'm sorry.
So Chief, is that something that that we've considered, or is that something that we could look into? And putting aside the technology of doing it, which which I would leave to others, and not necessarily expect your department to take the lead on. Do you have concerns about that? Of trying to implement a system like that?
So, Mr. Lembrecht, as you are well aware, I grew up in this town. My position, and I told the mayor this, is if it's not broken, don't fix it. In this case, the township committee, and I agree with it, believes that the overnight parking ordinance is very important. It's important to the safety of our residents. It allows us to get a good grasp of what's happening on our streets. You don't have to go far out of town to notice abandoned vehicles and other things within only blocks of outside of our jurisdiction. I believe if you turn it over to a computer, you're not going to have any oversight. And right now, why this works is because of the dispatcher oversight. I can tell you that there will be abuse. I can tell you that in this time that I've been an officer and the time that I've been chief, you have many residents talking about they need exceptions, there's special circumstances, and there is not a program that's going to account for those things. Example being when people are in a particular need. Okay, a computer can address those things, the live person can, and we can also understand what's happening in a particular location when there's parking issues, trust me, the one thing that this does not address is the residents complaining. So as much as a resident wants to park on the street overnight, when they start making a habit of it, the residents start to call. I can promise you that, because the residents don't want them on the street either. So the screening process is very important. It's done very diligently. It's done responsibly and respectfully. But those are the way, and only a person, a live person, is going to know that information. The computer system is not going to know the difference.
Right. Okay. No, Chief, I appreciate all that, and maybe maybe this is one where maybe I shouldn't have handled this in the mayor's absence, because maybe my understanding of what was being asked is different, which is, if rather than calling the police department, someone could submit the request online and then, get a response, that wouldn't be automatic, but, that would be reviewed by dispatch or someone else at the police department, and they would receive a response electronically. Would you have the same concerns, or is your understanding of the system different?
There's just too many bumps to that. Again,
Okay.
I go back to, it's not broke, don't fix it. If you try to automate it and then you deny somebody, there's no way to explain to the person why you're denying them for any particular reason.
Chief,
It will become cumbersome.
Chief, let me ask you a question, because again, I would understand it in the same context as Mr. Lembrick stated it, and I haven't talked to the mayor, so I don't know what his thoughts were on the topic. But the Enforces module that we just went to actually has this exact module where somebody wants to request a specific overnight, for whatever reason, doing construction on their driveway, they could just go into the system. There's a portal that would be Enforces, and it would actually come right to the police department, however you dictated it. So in that context, I was assuming it'd be the same way. I don't know if you're familiar with that module with Enforces.
Yeah, we're using it already.
Oh, you okay? All right. So
yeah. So the only difference, so the difference is they call the dispatcher vets the request, and then the dispatcher enters it into Enforces, which tracks it, and then the officers can see it live, the list live in their car.
So what would the difference be if the resident just went on the computer?
There's no vetting process.
There's no vetting process, which is the most important thing. I mean, so one thing that you're not getting is and I'm not going to pick on anybody in particular. I'm going to merely give you an example. If you have a house which is an extension of Seton Hall, okay, there will be 10, 20 cars parked outside of that place all the time, constantly. We have locations in town now where we get several complaints about them just being parked on the street. There's no ability for us to combat that other than an enforcement. If you make it easy for them, you're essentially making it impossible for me to enforce it.
So if I'm sitting in my house and it's raining like hell, my car's out there, I have to call the dispatcher and they're going to ask me, why can't you park in your driveway?
Yes.
So I got to give them a reason. If I
Yes.
can go online, I can just say, I don't,
Anything.
154 Lexington Avenue, whatever.
Yep.
Because I don't want to go out and move my car in the rain.
Yes.
You got to have that personal interaction. Otherwise, the system will erode and you'll have cars on the street overnight all the time.
Yes. It is not broken. The system is not broken.
Yeah, I mean, I just.
May I
want-
ask a question?
Go ahead.
Why don't we go in order? Deputy Mayor Dappis, and then we'll go to Ms. Holler.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where this came from. This is the first I'm hearing of this too. Is it because we've gotten complaints from residents that they weren't able to reach someone at PD or something like that, or they had put in a request and they thought it was approved and they got a ticket, notwithstanding the request? Like, I don't know what the context is here, because it does seem that we have a system that works. Because it provides for that level of individual customer service based on individual circumstances. And I think the chief made it very clear why the vetting is necessary to have greater context. So I'm not really sure where this is coming from. That's all I'm going to say. Stephanie?
Well, I mean, and Deputy Murdoch, I think that's fair. And, and again, I didn't put it on the agenda. I was trying to handle it in the mayor's absence. But, my understanding is, people, at least one, if not more residents said, it would be good if they could request this online, and maybe we could, add a portion where the person could have to give a reason why they were requesting it. But I take the point that we currently have a system. I certainly don't think the current system is broken. And, unless there's wide outcry that the system is broken or we need to do more, I don't necessarily think that we need to do more. But it was put on the agenda, so I wanted to get the chief's thoughts on it. And I wanted to make sure that, we were all operating from the same set of facts in terms of what I understood the request to be. Ms. Holler?
Yes, just sort of along similar lines in that I've used the service before for guests, for myself, and I'm just sort of curious where it came from. I mean, it's one thing to think that it works because it works for me, but someone thought enough of it to contact the township committee. So I'm just curious if there's some sort of blind spot.
Okay. Well, I mean, other than the email that was forwarded to me by the mayor and the fact that the mayor asked me to put it on the agenda, I don't want to, offload this entirely, but I at this point, I've reached the end of the advocacy that, that I can do on the matter. Because no resident has contacted me about this, so I was just passing it on. And I think the chief and others have given good reasons why the current system works and why an online system would only complicate matters or make the system less effective than it is now. So if there's still questions from the mayor or others after this, we can discuss it again. But I think for now, we've covered it.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's right. And thank you for that summary. Well done. Maybe the issue is, and again, we'll talk about it more. I think maybe the issue is the request to allow people to have an online place to go to make the request, which then triggers a vetting process. Not that the online request is automatically approved, but rather instead of having to talk to a dispatcher, because people don't want to talk on the phone anymore, because they don't want to talk to people, period. They can just go online somewhere, put in the request, and that triggers someone to contact them back. Now that seems inefficient to me if you can get to someone in the beginning, but maybe that's where this was coming from. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's probably exactly that.
And that may be the case, and like I said, I certainly would not be in favor of any system that replaced or circumvented the current system that requires an explanation to be given and for there to be human vetting by dispatch or PD before approval is given. I wouldn't want the computer to be AI giving approval or denying a request. As you stated, I wonder, if maybe it's just people who wanted to sort of kick off the request by submitting it online versus calling. But the non-emergency number for Maplewood PD, I think, is pretty easily obtained. So I don't think this is too burdensome on the public.
Mr. Lembrecht, we're spending a lot of time on something that nobody really wants to move on.
Yep. Well, it's the last item on the agenda. Do you have something else you want to discuss?
I have a few.
Okay. All right. So, Chief.
So as we all know on this call, the library is now moved into the OEM building. I want to reassure everybody that the police department, the public works, and our IT have got the camera system up over there and running. That was one thing that we promised that we would do and have implemented. So that's been done. some training. Obviously, I was going to bring up under new business is just one of the AG directives for this year is training for use of force. He completed an entirely new policy for use of force, and now we're implementing it. It's actually not going to be totally implemented and trained until spring of next year, but it is very serious training. It requires the officers to go to not only do internal training, but to go to other agencies to do training with them as well. It's very comprehensive. Use of force training hasn't been revamped for many years, so this is a pretty substantial training, and we'll be focusing on this use of force training for probably the next up to 5 or 6 months. So you'll continue to hear about that implementation.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Anything else that you want to bring to the Public Safety Committee's attention?
No, that's it.
Okay. Does any member here have any questions for the chief or anything they want to bring up before we go to public comment?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Ms. Adams, Deputy Mayor Daffis.
No, thank you.
Kohler?
No, thanks very much.
Okay. Okay, not hearing anything. I think we will move to public comment. We do have a few members of the public who are here. So this is the portion for public comment on the police department portion of the Public Safety Committee meeting. If you have a question or a comment, please either press the raise hand button on your screen, or if you can't find it, please just unmute yourself and speak up, and I'll recognize folks in the order I see them or hear them. All right, I'm not seeing any hands. I'm seeing one hand. Okay. Bailey, I'm seeing Allison Murphy. If you could convert her to a panelist so she can speak.
Hi, thank you so much for letting me speak. I am a parent and a PTA member at Seth Boyden School. I know that there is an ongoing investigation on the alleged bias incident that happened last week. I'm not going to ask you to speak on the ongoing investigation. I understand that that's not possible. I just have been getting a lot of questions from members of our community, and I just wanted to bring some of those concerns here tonight. I brought this up last night at our President's Council meeting with Dr. Taylor, assuming that he was going to not be able to speak about this as well, but I just wanted to share the questions that are coming. As far as we know that the investigation has been turned over from the district to the Maplewood Police Department, and there's questions from a lot of families about how long this is going to go on for. I'm assuming that the answer to that is we don't know, but bringing that question to you. Also, there's a lot of questions about whether the other witnesses in the room, namely the second graders, are being questioned either by the district or the police department. We haven't really heard any official word on that. And as you know, when there's not official word, that leads to a lot of speculation and discussion on social media. So just bringing that to you. And then the second concern, and I think for some families, it is a concern, for some, it is a sense of safety, is the presence of the police cars that continue to be outside of our school. My own kids seem to be completely oblivious to the fact that they are there. For some families, like I said, I think it brings a sense of safety. For others, it feels like there could be an ongoing threat possibly happening at the school. And this incident last week, I think, comes on the heels of the two very closely spaced, I'll call them accidental code red drills. One happened in September and one happened in October. The system was accidentally tripped, and we know that they lasted a pretty long time because we know that the police department has to come and investigate, but they lasted for 30 or 40 minutes. And we know from Dr. Taylor and from our students and staff that police entered the building with weapons drawn. So And then that all comes on the heels of COVID. So I think that there's just a lot of heightened sense of anxiety within our community. And I just wanted to bring that to you all. I don't know if it's possible for the Maplewood Police Department to reach out to our community, but I do think that hearing from the police department might go a long way within our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. And, Chief, I understand that, as Ms. Murphy mentioned, you may be constrained in some of what information you can give to the public at this point, but, could you address maybe some of the questions and issues that Ms. Murphy raised?
She's correct and you're correct. I can't talk about the investigation. She mentioned would we be talking to the students in the classroom. I can't talk to what this district will do or won't do. I can tell you that I've asked them to step down as far as their investigation, so that way we could go forward with our investigation. That is the natural progression of this. They did not give me any pushback on that. So interviewing the students in the classroom, I would assume that that's probably going to happen. To what extent and to whom, I think we're going to be very selective, but certainly that's part of our investigation. And I wouldn't be disclosing who or what child or what staff person we would be talking to. But I think that would be a natural course of the investigation. As far as the presence of the police car, that actually preceded the investigation that we're referring to because of the code red situation at the school. You need to clearly understand that if we receive a code red at the school and nobody can articulate whether it's real or not, we're planning on treating it as if it is real, and that is what occurred. And then there was a collaboration between myself and the district on how we would handle the situation, and this is an actual alarm system that was in failure. So we came up with a protocol, a temporary protocol until that system is replaced. And what's unfortunate is that the two things, the investigation and these activations, occurred at the same time. So unless we know that something is a false alarm, we're going to treat it like it's real. That would be whether it was a code red or a bank alarm. So we're going to respond as how we train to those things, because we don't have information to assist us otherwise. As far as our presence at the school, we've also collaborated with the district, and there is a balance between what they want our presence to be and what they feel that the district and the school in particular's safety concerns are. So I can tell you that there is a safety concern there, and that is why there is a presence of the police department there.
So Chief, the presence there was in response to specific threats, or at least general threats that the district received directly, right?
I can confirm that there was threats there, but I don't want to get too specific.
No, I understand, but the district did receive threats, and so that there was a response there, and also,
yes.
While I wouldn't ask you to comment on any specifics of this investigation, when Maplewood police officers, need to interview a minor in any case, particularly a young minor, generally is that done with the, in the presence of the parent, not in the presence of the parent, but with the parent's consent? How is that generally handled?
Well, remember, anybody that we're talking about now, it would be a witness and not a suspect, because a suspect has a whole different scope of representation, right? Whether they have their Fifth Amendment rights, of course.
Oh, I understood.
When you're interviewing a child witness, the parent will always be there. Okay, particularly of this age, a parent would always be there, and they would be there with their permission. So in other words, if a parent said, yeah, we're going to skip out on this one, it's our job to, if it's part of the investigation and we would like to speak to somebody, we would schedule it around them. We would give them the opportunity. We have our own interviewers in-house that are experts with interviewing child victims. In this particular case, that decision will be made, at a time that it's necessary. I'll say that, but we have the training. And if we did so, any parent would be able to opt out. Obviously, can't force anybody to be a witness, and they would be present.
Okay, thanks, Chief. I'm seeing a hand raised by Ms. Holer.
Yes, just curious, what's the communication method to verify whether a code red is false?
Well, as far as our concerns is we received a code red in typical fashion, which would indicate to us that it would be a real activation. A false one would be if we knew that it was happening, right? Or
Like a drill?
correct?
But is there a phone
Or-
call? Like,
Yes. Well, no, if it was a planned event, we would know about it. So we would be expecting the activation. In this particular case, there was an activation and the people didn't know about it, right? So it wasn't like an alarm was tripped in error and they were able to call the police department and said, hey, we know what this is. Then we could go there and verify that. We would do a cursory review of the response to ensure that it was as stated. But if we had advance notice, but no, this in particular at Seth Boyden School, the alarm went off without other people's knowing. And in those situations, we have to treat it like it's an active alarm.
okay, so the alarm tripped, it was silent, and the school wasn't expecting a police presence.
Correct.
So when the alarm is tripped, is there communication to the school or are the police just dispatched?
Well, so if you're saying, do we call the school and say, is everything okay? Well, that just wouldn't make any sense. I'm not really
I
sure
just
what
want
you
to
mean by
know,
that.
you talked about a communication failure. So I'm trying to determine what communication that was and what
It was
communication typically takes place.
Okay, so I can tell you that this was a technology failure. This was not a communication failure. If there wasn't a communication failure that occurred because we could work through them. When technology tells you an emergency, whether it's a code red or it's a fire alarm, we have had these activations happen for fire alarms as well. And when we get there, if the person goes, nah, everything is okay, that's not an acceptable response. We still have to make sure that there's no emergency.
So did we stop that system
What
after the
system?
second time?
Uh,
However, the alarm tripped so that it was silent and the school wasn't expecting the presence.
So I can't quote to how many of those false alarms actually occurred. I know it happened a few times. At some point, I got a call from Dr. Taylor, who wanted to discuss how we were going to respond to this and move forward. So we could, while the alarm system was being fixed, we would have a protocol in place, which we did. I'm not going to talk to that safety protocol, but we discussed the safety protocol and the time that it would take to get that fixed. I made some recommendations. I made some recommendations on some increased security and some particular things I thought that they should be doing until the security system was fixed. And we had the presence outside of the school at the request of the principal and the district. So again, we haven't had officers in the school. We haven't been requested to have officers in the school. We have maintained an exterior presence so far.
Okay. And lastly, do we believe that the issue that caused the alarm to trip is something benign? The technology just became faulty after a certain point, or was there some interference?
Unfortunately, I can't speak to that. I would find out from the district about specifically what failed. But generally speaking, because these things all go through a monitoring system, right? So generally speaking, it's sensors, it's things, it's usually something hardware or software that fails, that when that occurs, they automatically call the police.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, Chief, just to clarify, there's no reason to suspect there was any foul play here in tripping the alarm. Right, okay. All right. Any other questions from the public?
Chief,
comments? Sure.
Just to be clear, so that everybody knows, we're taking the alleged bias crime very seriously, and we have a protocol, and we're operating on all systems in that regard.
Yes, we've made all the notifications that we're supposed to per AG guidelines. We are going step by step. Our officers and our detectives are specifically trained for bias incident. Everything comes in as a bias incident until it either is developed or turned into a bias crime, or however it's later determined. But it goes through a proper vetting, and then ultimately we'll review it with the prosecutor's office, which is standard procedure. So what that does is no one person in particular is making a decision about how something is handled or not handled.
Okay. And you've gotten full support from the township committee to move completely forward on this, correct?
Absolutely.
And I think, I think we who are elected officials just want to say that, whether this happened or not, any kind of incident in which someone is treated differently because of who they are, what they wear, what they believe in, who they love, that's not what we're about here in Maplewood. So we want to make sure that we live up to the values and the ideals of being a welcoming community. And that's our position. That's what we want everybody to know. And the police have a job to do, and that's what they're doing. Mr. Lindbergh, I'm wondering if we could have Ms. Murphy back on just to see if she has any follow-up questions to what we've all said.
Oh, sure.
Hi, no, thank you. I think that was pretty much answered all of my questions, and I understand that it's an ongoing investigation. So thank you for being as candid as you were able to be.
Thank you. And then we have another member of the community board on police. Blue, are you able to unmute?
Yes, hi. I just wanted to ask a question about the faulty technology piece with the code reds. I just wanted to make sure I understood that what you were saying, Chief Duvall, that that now that it's been discovered that this is faulty software or technology or whatever, that it's being replaced in some way. And so for right now, the increased police presence is to sort of make up for a gap in what the technology would normally be doing, or like until the technology is fixed. Is that kind of what you're saying?
So two things happened, okay? And they happened simultaneously. So we were there initially, given our presence as a part of our overall plan that Dr. Taylor and I had discussed while the technology was being repaired. What the extent of that is, I can't speak to that.
Okay.
But I can't speak to it because I don't know.
Right.
So I don't know what repairs or what they're doing. Right. But then you have an incident at the school, which becomes twofold. Right. For some parents who are upset about the code reds, now they have another incident that happens there. So it's really completely understandable. And I've got several emails from parents thanking me for our presence there. I want to reiterate that there's never been a request for us to be inside the school.
Right.
If that comes, you need to know that we are prepared to do that in the event of emergency. As I've already indicated, there have been threats made, and we will properly respond if need be, of course. But we are there in collaboration with the request from the school and the request from the district itself. We want to try to make people, particularly now, right? Particularly now, maybe people are not aware of the police car there and such. But if the school district asks me for a police car and it makes some people feel better, it's the least I could do. The officers are there in addition for increased presence due to the incident that occurred and the subsequent threats.
Okay, yeah. I think that all makes sense. I think what I was trying to ask was, sorry, if the technology piece has been repaired or if there's sort of like nothing happening.
I'm the wrong person to, I'm the wrong person to ask that question.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know about that. And because, and I made it very clear, I had a meeting with Seth Boyden today and with Dr. Taylor.
Okay.
And in no uncertain terms, and I've got some emails from parents, if they don't feel safe, that is my priority. Okay. So maybe some people won't like the presence of the police there, but so long as the district is asking for our assistance, we're going to provide our assistance, particularly when there has been threats.
Totally. That makes perfect sense. It's a different question about the technology that I'll have to ask elsewhere. Thank you though.
Of course.
I think either the head of the building, which would be the principal, or Dr. Taylor or someone on Academy Street would probably be the best source to know what the technological issue is and whether it's been resolved.
Okay. Thank
Any
you.
other questions or comments from the public? Seeing and hearing none. Chief, anything you need us to know before we adjourn for the evening?
I just want to reiterate with Mr. DeLuca stated. We take the investigation very seriously. It is not our job to pick sides or have biases ourselves. We are going to investigate any complaint that comes to us till its most logical conclusion, and then we're going to review it with the prosecutor's office and go from there. So we take it very seriously. The township, I discussed not necessarily the details of the investigation, but my standard with the township committee is that they understand that my department is treating any such complaint with most importance.
Right. So, and Chief, my understanding is that the goal is to follow the evidence and find the truth wherever and whatever it might be.
That's right.
And we certainly, the Public Safety Committee and the Township Committee, fully support your efforts to do that, here and in other situations. But, and I agree with Mr. DeLuca, and I'm glad he brought it up that, and I'm sure we've said it before and we'll say it again, that we certainly, regardless of how the facts in this particular situation turn out based on the investigation, that certainly we don't tolerate acts of bigotry or intolerance, racial, religious, based on gender or sexuality. So those matters aren't just those aren't just hurt feelings. Those can escalate to matters of criminality, such as requires investigation by the police or the prosecutor's office, and we'll support that where appropriate. And we support victims in Maplewood, and we support the rights of all people to feel safe in our town. So, Chief, thank you very much.
Mr. Lembrick, there's also one point I wanted to make for those who may or may not have read it in the Village Green, who asked me if I had a quote specifically about the threats. So my guess is between social media and other things, some people have learned about the threats that were made towards the schools, and I can tell you that I made a statement, and that was that I denounce making threats towards these schools or towards anybody. That it is not helpful to our investigation, and it also puts fear into the students and their parents. Not only the people who have to work in the schools, but you have the staff, and then you have the parents who have to worry about that. If I could promise that an investigation will be completed and it will be fair, and it will be just, and it will be without bias from our side. And that is not necessary to make the threats that have come across my desk.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, and that's consistent. I don't know if you saw, Dr. Taylor made a statement yesterday that conveyed a similar message about some of the threats that he's received, and the principal has received, and other people in the district have received, and and obviously we condemn that. It doesn't help anyone in this case, including and perhaps especially the victim here, for people to be making threats and causing law enforcement to have to potentially redirect efforts that could go to the investigation towards having to provide security and address these threats. If no one has anything further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
All right, I will, as the only other voting member of this committee, I will second it. We will go ahead and adjourn this meeting of the Maplewood Township Public Safety Committee.
Thank
Chief
you.
Hall, thank you very much. As always, everyone, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.